my name is Kiona and you're listening to the Real Truth Podcast, where we connect real life situations, real time, with diversity, equity, and inclusion, where I will talk to our leaders about real tangible change, their perspectives, and how we bridge the divide in our country and how we can implement change every day in our communities. Thank you for tuning in. You're now watching the Real Truth Podcast, hosted by myself, Kiona Sinks. Well, good morning. Welcome to the Real True Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Kiona. Thank you so much for joining. It's been such a long time since I have graciously came online to do an episode. I had to take care of some adulting things and kind of get some life stuff in order. And after just much reflection with rebranding and really thinking about this opportunity to talk to many leaders and a lot of people that I admire, what I really was conveying was truths and people's real life experiences. And so I think for me in this year, it will be more of a continuation from Up Next to transitioning with the Real Truth podcast and bringing you guys the same content, same expectations, same stories, and true and relevancy to our community and the stories that we all so much need right now in a time such as this. And today I have the privilege and the honor to have my first episode for this year, joined by myself and Mindy Corporon, a dear friend who I've had the honor and privilege to get to know here in Kansas City. You will understand exactly why I love her so much and what she has in her story and her testimony is much needed in Kansas City and beyond. And it fits exactly, in my opinion, where I thought we all are at, right where we all are right now as it relates to just our country and just a lot of things that we've experienced over 2020 with grief and sympathy and empathy. And they're just important conversations and topics that we need the most. And so I really want to bring Mindy on and have her talk about a lot of things that we all know to be true and just from her perspective and sharing with you her transitioning and her professional experience. And so without further ado, I'll bring on my friend Mindy Corporon.
Hi, Kiona.
Hey, Mindy, thanks for joining me. Good morning to you. And just thank you so much for making time.
Good morning to you too. Thanks for having me.
Hey, for people who don't know you or they're not familiar with you in Kansas City, because I know you're from here, born and raised, tell people just a little bit about yourself.
You know, I lived there a long time. It's like I was born and raised there. You and I met in 2015, but I actually was born and raised in Oklahoma. But I spent 21 years in Oklahoma and then moved to Kansas City as a 21-year-old. And I didn't leave Kansas City until I was 50. So I spent a lot of time there. I call Kansas City home for sure. Well, we met through 7 Days and Tiger Flowers. And the reason that there is a 7 days, so it's called 7 Days, Make a Ripple, Change the World. And the reason there is an activity called 7 Days is because of the tragedy that happened in our lives, my family's life, in April 2014, when a white supremacist murdered 3 people in Overland Park, Kansas. He murdered my father, William Corporon, and my son, our oldest son, Reed Underwood, and then he murdered Terry Lamano. And that tragedy does not define me. There's a lot of conversation in people's lives after they've had a tragedy about whether you allow it to define you. But rather what I've tried to do is really live my life to the fullest on behalf of my dad and Reed and Terry since their murders.
Absolutely. And thanks for sharing that, Mindy. And obviously you mentioned we met each other through Give 7 Days, which brought you to, obviously the tragic event that you experienced with your son, Reed, and your father, Dr. Corporon. And it kind of is very symbolic because right now, especially in 2020 and last year and what we've all experienced, you're no stranger to that. And being a white woman and seeing firsthand the hate that we all know that exists, but also just white supremacy and how that is such a real thing. And it was more so amplified last year very vividly where everyone could see. What is the first thing that comes to your mind, obviously given your experience and your reflection, but also comparing that to just everything that we experience? How does that play with you and what comes to mind?
Yeah, those are really those are very in-depth conversations to have. And I think that it's important to have them among all people, among, white women and Black women and a group, cross-racial conversations. When the shooting happened, when the murders happened to us, there was not a racial connotation. They were white people. They were murdered because he thought they were Jewish. So I spent a lot of time in the conversation was about faith, and because he murdered them because they were Jewish. That is still white supremacy. That is still neo-Nazism. Right. It just still is. And right. When I tell my story, I have a platform from which to talk, because when I say to someone, my family was murdered by a white supremacist, well, one, they look at me and they're like you're white, and that doesn't make sense. And then they say, are you Jewish? Well, no, we were Christian. We are Christian. My point is that people still today will say, I didn't know that still happened. They'll say, I didn't know that still happened. And I'm like, and so I feel like, Kiona, that I do have a responsibility to say it does still happen. I mean, I know we see it on the news, right. And we saw that happen with George Floyd, and we saw it happen with Ahmaud Arbery, which the Ahmaud Arbery murder is what spurred me to create the Reed Sisters, which spurred me on to create Respect, Engage, Appreciate, Trust, and pull together white women and Black women to be together and be seen together. Because I just thought, you know, do these white people, these typically men, but it's not all men, white supremacists, not understand that we're all human first? What else can we do to help them get away from their hate? What else can we show them that it's okay to respect one another and to understand one another? I feel like I have that responsibility to do that, because I'm a white person who was attacked as a victim in 2014 of white supremacy. It is real. It does exist. And and as a white woman, I don't experience it every day from other people, but I live it every day because my dad and son were murdered because of it.
Yeah, and you said something very key, you know, as a white woman and having that platform and our lived experiences. Mindy, we talk about it all the time in our Reed Sisters group. Just the racial perspective, and now more than ever needing those relationships and to have those conversations more consistently and not getting complacent and comfortable. You know, now that, you know, it's a year ago, we've moved into a new presidency, and it's like there's still things that need to be kind of talked about and walked out every single day. And I know we'll talk more about your father, because I do want to ask you, you know, it's obviously Give 7 Days is upcoming, which marks that anniversary. And I want to talk to you about your book as well. But you mentioned, you know, having cross-racial relationships. And so right now, everybody has made the statement. So organization, companies, individuals, CEOs, you know, pledging better to do more for individuals in their everyday spaces. And you're doing that. You took initiative to reach out to, you know, people you knew and people you didn't know and say, hey, we need to do a better job at, like, we need Black people, we need people of color. And so why was that so important to you? And what would you encourage others to do in moving forward to bring and unite more, making it more common for Black people of color and white people to, you know, start having different perspectives in their conversations?
Right. Yeah. There's so much I can say about different facets about what you just talked about. So it came to me. It really came to me as like a vision and an idea. I feel that God gives me nudges. I think God gives everybody nudges, but I actually listen. I really do. I listen, and I think to myself, what is He asking me to do now? You know, why? What is He asking me? And it was a vision of white women and Black women together. And I didn't know who they were. It was just this vision, like a dream. Like someone might say, oh, you dreamed it. Well, okay, it was like in a dream, it was a vision. And I thought, what am I supposed to do, you know, with this? And Reed's birthday was coming up. His 21st birthday was coming up. And Ahmaud Arbery had just been shot and killed in February. And now it was May of 2020. And I wanted to do something in honor of Reed. And Reed wrote, when he was a freshman in high school, he wrote things about racial controversy. He wrote several pieces, and I was flipping through some of his books and read them. And I thought, okay, my lane has been the faith lane, because they were murdered because someone thought they were Jewish. And I had really just focused on that. Faith Always Wins, focused on interfaith understanding and interfaith dialogue. But now, as Mindy Corporon, I felt like I needed to start focusing on interracial and cross-racial conversations. So I did. I reached out to initially Dr. Nicole Price and asked her for help and some guidance. And then I was embarrassed, Kiona. I was embarrassed to sit there and think to myself, how many Black women do I know that I could call right now and ask them to join? And I could think of immediately 8 women. And actually later I thought about it, I probably knew 12, but 8 came to mind really quickly. And you were one of them. And I thought we need to get together and have a conversation because I don't know what I don't know. And so many times it's a peripheral. I mean, even if we were close friends, like I know you and you know me and you could call me and ask me a question, but you know, we're not going to dinner every week, or we're not having tea every week. I haven't spent the night at your house. You haven't spent the night at my house, and stuff like that. But we're friends, and I would do something for you. But would I stop and ask you? I didn't. In May of 2020, I didn't feel comfortable to say, Kiona, tell me what has happened to you that makes you feel less than. How is it that when you wake up every day, because your skin is a different color, might someone treat you less than? Because as a white person, I don't ever think that. I don't ever wake up and think, I'm white, I'm going to get treated differently. Well, I didn't until I started having Read Sisters and I pay more attention. So what I think is important, what I would recommend for people to do is to find a friend of color and actually have a real honest conversation. 2 people that I've talked to, and they've both been men, it just happens to be that they've been men, and they have coworkers who are men of color, and they've said, oh, and I'm just making up a name. Oh, Joe, Joe, I think Joe's fine. Joe hasn't ever had that happen to him. And I said, have you asked him? Like, have you asked him if he's been discriminated against? Have you asked him how he feels, when he is trying to hail a taxi or get into a line somewhere, or have you asked? And they were like, well, no, I've never really just asked him because I didn't feel like I should. I said, well, then what kind of friend are you? And that's the hard part. That's the tough part. And I pushed into it with our Read Sisters, and I appreciate, and all of us, the white women on there appreciate that the women of color that we're meeting one another, and we do have a lot in common, and friendships, real friendships and support are forming. And that's what I feel like is important.
Yeah, you said a lot, and I couldn't have said it better. This podcast is the Real Truth podcast, and you're speaking a lot of real truths. And I just feel like, adding to what you said, Mindy, a lot of people are doing, self-work, educating themselves on the Black experience. I'm Black. I don't know it all. I'm still learning, to your point, every single day, even about my own history and the relevancy of even those stories that I hear my grandmother and my family sharing, and how that's relevant to everything we see today. And to expand and ask you, a lot of people are reading, white fragility and like all these kind of what we talked about in our Read Sisters group, race 101, right? The basics. And I want, you said something very key, being authentic and really having real relationships. So in my opinion, reading White Fragility doesn't make white people entitled to the Black experience. And now you just know everything, you're good to go, and we just check the box and we keep moving forward. Would you please just talk a little bit more about, what does that really look like, right? Because we all jump on a call together, we all talk, and we share some vulnerable things from our perspective, but it really truly doesn't work without having both parties, meaning both Black people and white people, sharing that vulnerability and creating that safe space to fully move forward in healing and grief, which we will talk about as well.
Right. So also one thing that I learned when I first met Stephanie Smith and Michelle Wimes, I sat down with them and I was on a panel with them, and I was the only white woman in the panel, and everyone else, there were 3 women, I think, of color. You put the panel together, and then the gal who is Latinx, am I saying it correctly? Latinx, she's Latino. And I was the least educated. I'm the least educated person on that panel, okay? But if you looked at that panel, if a broad spectrum of people from the United States looked at the panel and saw me on that panel with women of color and a woman who's Latin, they would think that I was probably the most educated, but I'm not. And so that's just a perception that people have. And I didn't know until I started meeting with you all and our new friends, the Black women that we're meeting with on Read Sisters, that how highly educated as a group, as a core, Black women are, because what I've been told is you feel like you have to be so highly educated to to get any kind of acknowledgement. To reach a pinnacle of success that you want to reach, you have to be more educated than me. Because just looking at me, people think white people are more educated. I learned that. I've learned that those microaggressions happen to you and my friends every day by someone who might walk across the street, might look at white people differently when you're in a line, and then look at you and have a different look on their face, and just might make you feel like you're less than. And, I've been the only woman in a room full of men in wealth management. So my career was wealth management. And I tell people I grew up in a man's world in wealth management. I spent 20 odd years in wealth management, and frequently I was the only woman in the room, but I was also a white woman. And the women on our group are some of the women in our group are in high powered positions. And they talk about how they might be the only woman in the room, and they might be the only person of color. And so they're relied on, I've heard from you all, you're relied on to share your experience and represent all Black people. Like, because you're the Black person in the room, therefore you should represent all Black people, all people of color. You should be able to answer that question. Just like if I'm a female in the room, the men might look at me and say, well, how do all women feel about this? And I can't represent all women. I can represent me, maybe a couple of friends, etc. But even my friends, we're different humans. So it's been very eye-opening. And what we are doing in our friendship, which I think is key for people to understand, is we're supporting one another. We've met Dawn Collins, who is just this wonderful woman up in the Northeast. And unfortunately, her son, Richard, was also murdered, and it was a hate crime. And so we are supporting what she's doing on behalf of her son. Other women, we're supporting Nicole Price, we support Michelle Wimes, we support Melanie. People have changed jobs. Doris Rogers got a really great new job, and we support her. So it's been friendship. And if you have an acquaintance, if your followers have an acquaintance who is of color and you think you know them, go ahead and have coffee with them and really ask them some questions. Ask about their experience growing up, and ask them about their daily experience. What do they experience? And you'll get to know them better. And I feel that I have a responsibility to help support you and the other women that I've met through this.
That's awesome. And you said it so perfectly. And I want to talk more about Give 7 Days, because that cultivated a lot of what springboarded you to where you are today, and healing and sympathy and showing compassion for other people. Mindy, you just show amazing compassion. Since the first I've met you, you've always been the same as it relates to that. But April 13th in 2014, your father, obviously, and your son, Reed, was murdered at the Jewish Community Center here in Kansas City. And then moving forward, you decided to found and start Give 7 Days, really amplifying kindness and being loving and sharing amongst many people in our community the basically the depth and the bandwidth we all can have if we were to just do one thing of kindness and take some time out. Can you talk more about that? Because we know it's coming up on April 13th through the 25th, yes. Right? And yes. It's going to be a week-long, literally virtual this year, celebration to commemorate the anniversary of your father and your son, but also giving us an opportunity in the community to recognize more compassion for other people and to share that kindness.
Right. So it was spurred on definitely because of their murder. So the Faith Always Wins Foundation was created first, and that's a 501c3, Faith Always Wins Foundation. And then the Faith Always Wins Foundation produces 7 Days, Make a Ripple, Change the World. And that's like the formal name is 7 Days, Make a Ripple, Change the World. And our URL is give7days.org. So it's GIVESEVENDAYS.org. And you are really quick and have it right up there on the screen for everybody. And so why did we do that? You know what? When the murders happened, we were shattered. We were shattered and broken. Our family was, but a lot of community members were too. Many people. It was really scary what happened. That this happened in our community, our very typically normally, safe and loving community. And what happened is people showed us so much love. We were shown so much kindness that, and I remember Jim Lamano and I talked about this, and my mom is the one who said in particular, when we honor, your father and Reed and Terry Lamano, how about if we ask people to do 7 days of kindness? How about if we ask them to be kind do an act of kindness one day each day for 7 days in a row. So this was like brainstorming, like what does that look like? And do we need to tell people what to do? Do we need to give them some ideas of kindness? We weren't sure. And then a songwriting competition was presented to us, an essay competition. Now we have a button art competition. What we've done in over the 7 years, this is the 7th year, is we have a huge focus on the youth, on the next generation. So frequently, and you heard this when I met you and you were young, you were still in high school when I met you, and Tyrone was lifting you up and building you up, and we were saying to younger people, you're going to be the change. You're going to be the change of the world, right? You hear that as a young person. Well, how can you be the change if people don't give you the opportunity? Like they can say that, the adults can say that, but if they don't really give you the opportunity to do something and take action. So we created through Jill Anderson, she's the only employee of Faith Always Wins Foundation. She's the only person paid as an employee, and she created the Kindness Youth Leadership Team. We had a youth advisory board from the get-go, but she really put it together and formed it. Our youth advisory board in 2015 was created by Jake Goldman, who was a Jewish young man. He was 16 at the time, and that is now morphed into, we get about 66 applications a year, and then we utilize and pull on about 25 to 30 high school students, and they are hands-on putting together everything for 7 days, from PR, photography, event planning, talking to our speakers, scheduling appointments with either Church of the Resurrection or the Islamic Center of Johnson County or the Hindu Temple. They are creating what they want to see our world look like, which is kindness. And so we ask people to be kinder every day for 7 days. Just pick your own 7 days if you want to. But then we've created these experiences. And the first one this year is on April 13th. That is the day of the shooting. It's the commemoration of the shooting. We're going to have a Ripple of Kindness Award for a local Kansas Citian who everyone knows. Everyone knows is Kansas Citian. And we are offering a Ripple of Kindness Award to this person. And then we're going to showcase the essay award winners who are high school students and our button art winners who are high school students. We're going to say to these youth, not just you can be the change, we're letting them be the change. Yes. We're letting them show kindness. And again, you showed the URL and people can register. We are going all virtual out of safety and precaution for everyone. And I have to tell you, Kiona, what you've probably noticed is that everything virtual, people can join from anywhere in the world. And so we are really a much smaller community with the whole virtual experience. And we do have people registered from Ontario, Canada already for our walk on April 25th. So I'm very excited about that too.
That's amazing. And I'm really excited just about all the things. And I remember participating in the first walk, to your point, with my involvement with Higher Impact back in 2014 in college. And just to see so many people in Kansas City come out and be a force and to stand in solidarity against, white supremacy, and just coming together and showing so much gratitude and love and happiness in Kansas City is something that I wish we obviously could do this year in person. But just to your point, virtual is the world we're living in right now. And as we move forward and transition, and having some hybrid options is pretty wise and smart. And so you're going to reach more this year probably than ever before. And that's incredible that people from across the world have already registered. And so April 13th through the 25th is the prime time week. And so we want to make sure people get registered. And Mindy's mentioned give7days.org, where you can go register and do that. And Mindy, in springboarding in our last session, or last couple of minutes together, I want you to talk about, obviously that caused a lot of tragic, life-shifting dynamics for you, for your family, for extended family. And so that involves doing the work and healing and really kind of doing a lot of internal self-reflection and moving forward and forgiving. Can you talk about that particular part of how this is giving you now the opportunity to go out, not only in Kansas City, but now you're speaking across the country and you're doing more workshops with corporate workplaces, because we can't separate grief from work. I mean, we take all those things with us every single day, and being vulnerable and realizing that. What are you doing, and how does that look now this year with a lot of grief and passing that we all have experienced that is so timely.
Right. You're right, Kiona. Everyone has experienced grief now. Everyone in the world knows what it feels like to know what your life is like and have it taken from you. So just a year ago right now, March 11th through 13th is when our world shut down and the pandemic happened. And for people who had never experienced any kind of sudden change in their life or grief event, they all experienced it because everything stopped. Just everything came to a halt.
Yeah.
And our lives came to a halt. And that was a grief experience. And it still is. It still is for many who might be a long hauler COVID. Somebody might have died that someone knows. I know of people who have passed away, but I have been, blessed that it hasn't been anyone in my circle. But I know that is still happening, that people are still getting sick and can die from that. And that causes significant grief. In terms of healing, you mentioned healing and forgiveness. You mentioned a lot of words there that do take a lot of time to process. And I did write a book. I wrote the book, Healing a Shattered Soul, which explains significantly the steps that I took and that other people in my family took to see that the reality of what our life was, and then to try to make steps onward and to push through that grief. And my family members would say that I did that I kind of grabbed some of them kicking and screaming and pulled them through grief. And we've done that, but we have had to make significant life changes. And I tell people on my own podcast and in the book that I've learned that we have to give ourselves permission to be broken, and we need to give ourselves permission to forgive. Let me talk about forgiveness just real quickly. Forgiveness is not holding the hate in your heart. Forgiveness does not mean, when I say I forgive the shooter, that doesn't mean that what he did wasn't wrong. What he did was wrong. What he did was heinous and evil and a crime, and he has been put in prison for that. What I don't do is I don't carry around hate for him. I don't think about him. I don't mention his name. He's not mentioned in the book. He's somewhere else. He did that. It's reality. And I live with my reality. And I have to give myself permission to grieve when I need to grieve, which could be crying on the floor. I give myself permission to find joy from eating a strawberry rhubarb pie that Reet really loved, or eating, a sausage and sauerkraut that my dad loved. Just talking about that brings me joy. And so when people are grieving, it's so important to give yourself permission to sit in that sadness for the time that you need to. I don't want to say as long as it takes, because you can sit there too long. You really can. And you can possibly need help, mentally help. You could need psychological help. I saw a therapist for over a year. You could need all of those things, but give yourself permission to grab onto a lifeline, whether it's a friend or a therapist or your church or your synagogue or your mosque, and find a way to find joy, because then you want to give yourself permission to find joy, because you can. And someone said, what do you want people to get from my book? And I said, I want them to understand that healing, the process of healing, is a long process. I'm not completely healed. I won't ever be healed, but I know how to find joy, and I can find joy and sadness in the same minute, and I can be okay with that.
Yeah, no, that's good. And there's no separation between the two, which I think is so important for you to talk about. And just forgiving, but still remembering are two different things. And you still can find joy in life once you've done that work. And Mindy, sharing with you, I mean, even this year, right? Like, there's a lot of things that we've all experienced that are very triggering and reminders, and put us, like you said, around this time last year, our world was shutting down. And so you really had time, like whether you liked it or not, it was like, I got time to do all kinds of stuff. And you just start thinking about your life. And I know for me, it's been this past year doing a lot of what you talked about, self-reflection, healing, doing the counseling, not just health wellness, Dr. Michelle Robin, who's a great friend I know of yours, and for me, life-changing, and so not to go on a tangent about me, but just all those different things that make us better human beings. And I'm just taking more appreciation of that and ownership in my life as well. And so to hear you say that is very powerful. And with the forgiveness as well. And I want to also make sure you talk about the book. So when is that going to be released? Because you've mentioned it, and I want to make sure people know when it's releasing and how they can get it.
Yes, thank you. So pre-orders start March 22nd. So on March 22nd, we'll have links up on my webpage, and it'll also be on social media. Locally, I am supporting Rainy Day Books. And so I know Vivian Jennings personally. So Rainy Day Books and I are going to work together. They're going to have my book available. So if you're local to Kansas City, or you know of Rainy Day Books, or you want to buy local, please buy from Rainy Day Books. But it will be available on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, and there was another one. Oh, Front Edge Publishing, my publisher's website. So I know there's another one. Front Edge Publishing is my publisher, and they have been fantastic. So they published a book and I published many, but they published Bill Timaeus's book recently, and that's how I met them. And they have been fantastic to work with. So my team is David, Susan, and Dimitri, and they have been working to have it ready. The test print is on its way to me. And then the public can start ordering it on March 22nd. It's called Healing a Shattered Soul.
Well, my birthday's on the 22nd, so maybe that'll mark me going to go grab your book. And also, I think this is very timely, entering 26 and making that a priority to read seriously. And Mindy, I mean, I don't say this lightly to you just because I just know you, but I just have never seen anyone go through the things and the experiences that you have endured and come out just so stronger, much more than ever before. And to be able to share, not just, something that happened in your life. It's like you're sharing it with everybody. Everybody in Kansas City, yeah. when they put on a button, which I have a lot of those buttons with Give 7 Days on, when they put on the shirt, any shirt, they're representing your father and your son's legacy, and they're extending and they're making that pledge and saying, I'm giving 7 days, and I believe in kindness. I believe in love and compassion and healing and forgiveness. And so thank you for everything that you do for Kansas City. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for everything that you do for everything, because it's not easy, and to be vulnerable and to now look at where you are from when I met you and to see how this has expanded in ways that I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like everybody really has rallied around this cause, and not surprised at all, but just out of so much tragic, there's always happiness is what I've learned through this.
Right. You're so sweet. If I have one more minute, I want to say that
yes,
when the bad stuff happens, when George Floyd, was murdered, when Ahmaud Arbery was murdered, when my dad and Terry Lamanno and Reed were murdered, when Heather Heyer was murdered. So Susan Bro was part of our friend group.
Yep.
When those really bad things happen, and they do, those bad things happen, and other bad things happen to people. It could be job loss, etc. But when things happen, it typically, when it's that kind of a hateful thing, it's one person or two people who want that to happen. It's not the whole world. And so by wearing a 7 days t-shirt, by wearing a kindness t-shirt or a love t-shirt, by joining 7 days, Make a Ripple Change the World, and people pulling together, or any other type of, organization, like Be Good to People is a good organization. When you join together as a group, as humanity and community, and you come together, we need to be louder. Kindness needs to be louder than hate. And, so I'm okay with people walking in the streets and protesting. Nobody wants people to riot, but protesting together is the same as 7 days, all of us wearing our shirts. We're protesting in a kind way that hate and evil shouldn't happen. It's the same kind of thing. We're coming together as a community, and we're showing love to one another. And that's what I tell people, that one man wanted my dad and Reed and Terry Lamanno dead, one man. And everyone else came and supported us and lifted us up. And I just feel like that now God has asked me to do what I do, and I feel nudges and visions, and I act on them. And I love that people want to do acts of kindness, and I try to give them all the pathways that they can. So thanks, Kiona. I love our friendship. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mindy, so much. And again, you all can go register for the Give 7 Days, Make a Ripple change the week of April 13th through the 25th. And you can go do that at give7days.org to get more information and to find out how you can participate virtually this year and take advantage of all the amazing things that Give 7 Days is doing. And Mindy, thank you again for spending your morning with me and just for our friendship, extending just space to grow and to be better every single day. Thank you all for watching the Real True Podcast. This is the first of many. I'm not going anywhere. I know people were like, where have you been? If you didn't catch the beginning, I have been doing a whole lot of things. Life has changed a lot for me in the past 6 months. And every Friday now at 10 o'clock, 3 to twice a week, I will be going live and sharing more of stories from many people that we all admire, new faces, old faces, some familiar faces that have been on the show in the past. And so look for that. Follow this page, share this broadcast today. If you just share it, I would appreciate that so someone can hear Mindy's message and the powerful things she had to say. Thank you all so much. And we look forward to seeing you all very, very soon. Have a blessed day.